Hello and welcome back to this channel. Today we're talking once more about the Faroe Islands and the most beautiful place you can see there. It's MYKINES Island. The Faroe Islands is absolutely stunning. I've visited last year, filmed a full series of vlogs about it, so go and check them out. They really give you a good idea of what you can expect if you travel to the Faroe Islands. In this video I want to focus on my favorite place on the islands, one of the most beautiful places I have ever been to in the world. It's MYKINES. MYKINES is one of 18 islands of the Faroe Islands, and that island is located in the west of Vagar. It's actually the westernmost island of all of the Faroe Islands. That island is very quaint and super special. There are about 40 houses on that island, but only 11 permanent residents. That means people who stay on that island the whole year round. That has a lot to do with the climate of this place. During summer, more people come and stay there, people from other islands or tourists like to stay there, but during the long winter, almost 8 months, almost nobody wants to stay there. It's a harsh winter, and during that time the only way to leave or get to the island is by helicopter. In summer there is a ferry which most tourists take, but you can also take the helicopter in summer, but more about that later on. The official website of the Faroe Islands calls MYKINES the most fragile and most sacred island of the country. So let me introduce you to what this island has to offer and what you could do there if you decide to visit. Make sure to watch until the end because I have a few very special tips that might end up being very helpful for you. MYKINES Island is a bird watcher's paradise. They have many different rare species there, and the beloved puffin bird, which looks a bit like a penguin but much smaller. You gotta see it yourself and you're almost guaranteed to spot one on one of their famous hikes. And that leads me to the next popular activity. Hiking is a big thing on MYKINES Island. The most popular hike takes you from the village MYKINES out to the lighthouse and back across the rugged countryside of the island, down big cliffs, over bridges. It's a really exciting journey. But there are also a few other hikes you can do. As soon as you arrive on the island, you will see a map of the place with suggested routes you could follow. Keep in mind that the hike out to the lighthouse costs extra. It was around 20 euros when I went last year, and you can also take a guided tour out to the lighthouse. You will spot puffins with your guide, and you will also be able to see sunset from there. Other than bird watching and hiking, there isn't that much to do on MYKINES, but you can definitely have a nice time just exploring MYKINES village. Take a lot of pictures, interact with the many sheep on the island. You will have a great time. As I mentioned before, during the summer months, there is a ferry going out to MYKINES Island from Vagar and back. You can do MYKINES as a day trip, get there in the morning, come back in the evening. I do, however, recommend to stay there overnight. If you do decide to stay overnight, there are a few options. For example, you can stay on their campground, but you can also stay in one of the 6 guest houses they have on the island. There are no grocery stores available, so make sure to bring your own food. There are 2 cafes where you can get breakfast or drinks or other small things, but don't really rely on these for food. I would definitely suggest to bring your own food to the island. Let me now talk a bit more about the experience I had when I visited last year. I took the afternoon ferry starting in Sorvagur on Vagar Island to MYKINES. When I arrived, I was just settling in. I had my tent with me, so I went to the campground, spent some time setting up everything and then exploring the local village. It really blew me away how quaint this place was, how small and how stunning the nature around me was. I had my tent close to a house where they actually created a natural pool from one of the springs coming out of the rocks. So it was quite fun to watch people go for an ice cold bath in that natural pool. And I also went by the cafe to get something small to eat. You can also charge your phone at the local restrooms or get some water there as well. I then went to bed quite early because I wanted to get up early the next morning before the next tourist boat would arrive at 9 o'clock. I started with a hike along the coastline going to the right, and then came back to the other hike going towards the lighthouse, where I also saw the puffin birds. Overall did quite a lot of walking, but got some stunning views got to see the wildlife, and took some of my favorite video footage I've ever taken. I then went back, gathered my things, took my tent down and waited at the ferry port to take the ferry back to Faroe Island. Overall, I had 2 absolutely magical days on MYKINES Island. I can only recommend it, especially if you're already on the Faroe Islands. Don't miss out on this. And as I promised before, here are a few tips to keep in mind if you are going to MYKINES. If you're still not sure if you should take the boat to MYKINES or the helicopter, I personally recommend the boat, because on your way out you get a great glimpse of Drangnarir, another very popular attraction on the Faroe Islands. It's a stunning rock formation that you would have to pay a lot for to see usually, but if you take the ferry out to MYKINES, just look to your left and you will get a great view. It also makes sense to plan a trip to MYKINES at the beginning of your time on the Faroe Islands, because sometimes the flight or the boat back to Vagar might get cancelled due to bad weather conditions and you might get stuck on the island. This happens very rarely, but it does happen, and if you have a flight back home, for example, the next day, it's really annoying and you're stuck on that island. So I recommend to go at the beginning of your trip. That way you don't have to worry about anything and can just enjoy your time. Finally, you gotta make your reservation for the ferry in advance, because it's one of the most popular things to do on the Faroe Islands. So make sure to reserve early. For the camping, there should be a lot of space, but it still makes sense to give the campground a call. You will find their most up-to-date number on the official website of MYKINES or the official website of the Faroe Islands. If you have any other questions about MYKINES or any of the other Faroe Islands, I'm happy to answer them in the comments. Thank you very much for watching today, and I'll see you in the next video. Push it to the limit, I can't go